So you got some Americans that spent a couple of days on Red Note, and now they're ideologically subverted by the Chinese lifestyle. And it's going to be very difficult to persuade these Americans into realizing that what they saw on the app is not reflective of China. Now, it is true that there is a lot of anti Chinese propaganda in the United States. Some of that is true and other is exaggerated. And so when you're actually talking with a Chinese person and the exaggerations are debunked, then you end up thinking that everything that was told is a lie. And that's not the case. So, for instance, let's listen to this particular lady because she's got some interesting things to say.
Isn't it crazy how all it took was a bunch of Americans finally being able to communicate with Chinese people who directly live under communism, the thing that America is so afraid of will literally destabilize countries for heading that way. And yet here we are learning about how affordable their cost of living is.
So the first mistake here is to assume that China is communist. Now, I understand why many people do that mistake. It's because they do have the communist aesthetic. They have the hammer and the sickle. They are called the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. But they're not communists. I wouldn't call them capitalists either. They're a different system. They're a mixed economy. I would say that they're very close. Again, I don't want to make this comparison as ideological, but economically, they're kind of close to Nazism. Again, just ignore the ideology, okay? Like, don't think about the Nazis with the Jews and no. Like, the way that the Nazis ran their country economically is more similar to how the Chinese run their country now. And so they're not communists. If you want to look at communist nations, you can see North Korea. Romania used to be communist. And it's unfathomable for the modern American to even imagine what a communist system looks like. A communist system is the abolition of private property. You don't own anything. You don't own your business. You cannot sell your labor. That is the definition that Karl Marx even gave to free markets, right? Like the word capitalist is something that communists invented. They basically don't like free markets. They do not like the ability of you selling your labor. And as such, there is no private thing. Just so you can understand what this means, all right? Because like a lot of people just hear the definition and they think they get it. No, you don't. If you want to paint your neighbor's fence, that would be a crime in a communist country. Do you understand this? Like, if I go to your house and you're asking me to paint your fence and in exchange you want to pay me, I would go to jail. That is what a communist country looks like. The correct way to behave in a communist country is if I want to become a builder or a construction worker and paint fences, I don't get to go to your house and paint your fence. What I have to do is to go to the government, apply for the position of a painter, and the government has a controlled economy. Like, they know how many builders, how many painters they're needed. And then I will get a job there, and the government assigns me to different people to build stuff and paint stuff. I don't get to decide what I'm going to paint. Okay? And the problem is that if you actually get into the bad graces of the communist government, they can choose to put you at the back of the queue. They can choose to not send painters to you just to drive a point. And usually what you have to do is you gotta bribe the person from the government, right? You're like, can you not put me on top of the queue? Here's some cash. And then they send builders to you faster. Like, again, you can't hire your own, right? So China is nothing like that. There are very few communist countries on earth. China has a mixed economy. Like, you can actually create private businesses there, and people do it all the fucking time. The only thing that differs China from the United States is that at any point the government can seize control over a business. So, for instance, you got your TikTok channel, right? And you're allowed to have it in China. You can have your TikTok channel. You can say, whatever it is that their terms of service allows. But at any point, the government can seize control and say, all right, we need your channel. We need you to send this message. We need you to If you have like a small business, they can say, we need you to set these prices. We need you to do this and that and this. So like, if you create a business that's of interest to the government, they can seize control and dictate what you can do. This is something that doesn't happen in the United States. And it's also not something that has to do with China's prosperity. It's just a different economic system.
How 90% of people in China own the place that they live in.
Okay, so this is an issue regarding home ownership. I don't know if the statistics are accurate. China is an authoritarian nation, so they can cook the books. And often enough, a lot of governments do this. Like, let's not delude ourselves. But at least in other countries, you can have some form of overwatch. Like, if the United States claims that they have 90% home ownership, well, you can have journalists from the European Union actually investigating. And they can make FOIA requests, and they can actually get to the bottom of things if the numbers are correct or not. You can't do that with China. If the government says that there is 90% home ownership, you gotta believe them. But let's assume that the home ownership is actually that high. Most of the people do not actually own the land, the argument would be made, so they own the building on top of the land. Which means that once every 70 years, they have to renew their license from the government, which means that the government can say no if they want to create a highway there, but they have to compensate the person. I really don't like criticizing them for this, because the American system is the same way. Like, if the government wants a highway to come through your property, usually there are legal ways for them to do it. And in China, this is done very rarely, same like in the United States. The thing that I want to say about home ownership is that this is actually normal outside of China. In Romania, home ownership is also 91%, and we don't have communism. No, we just don't have immigrants, right? So like, if you're in America and your policy is for open border, well, the people that come in there require a house to stay. I know it's baffling, but it's true. And so if you keep getting millions of new people, they will require millions of homes. Are you building millions of homes? If the answer is no, well, you're going to have a shortage, right? Then there's another thing that Americans like. It's those tiny houses, the Matt Walsh houses, right? Like little tiny houses that look the same, and everyone has a backyard. You know, you have the Hassan Piker mansions, like all your leftists have them. Like little houses next to each other with a garden and a dog. Do you think those are efficient? I mean, they're really nice. Right? They look good. But are they efficient? No. Like, if you put the communist infrastructure there, like one of those massive buildings with 200 apartments, well, that's efficient. But are you going to do that? No, because America invented the communist version of capitalism. It's called the Homeowner Association, where every fucking thing has to be the same. Same color for the fence, same height for the grass. I know, it's so the price doesn't go. No, I know the gibberish. But in reality, you're creating places that people don't like to live in. From my understanding, a lot of people just buy those tiny homes with the homeowner association so that they can sell them later on. But it's not efficient, right? Because what happens is most of the time, the government wants to build affordable housing. And they're like, okay, we got a lot of immigrants, we got a lot of homeless people. Let's build a huge apartment with a huge apartment complex with 200 rooms, right? They will say no, not in our backyard, right? Like all those people that are voting left and they're liberals and they're very compassionate individuals, they will say no, you're not going to build it here. In China, they don't give a fuck. They will fucking build that building right in your backyard, right? And you, lady, you think that's normal until it's built in your backyard. And when it's built in your backyard, you're going to be like, oh my God, such a horrible system. Yeah, but like people require housing. Like you wanted 90% housing. Well, if you want 90% housing, that's how it's done. And you also don't get to have so many immigrants. They have to go back. 90% housing, right? Well,
how they don't really have homeless people.
That's a lie. I think they have millions. Everyone has homeless people. The difference is that, again, you don't really know the statistics. But if you're looking at liberal places, like leftist places in the United States, like California, there is a drug epidemic. There is a drug epidemic is because you're not tough on crime. I'm sorry to say this, like you can say a lot of shit about China, but they are actually tough on crime. If you go there to sell drugs, you're going to have a very bad time. They're not going to have like leftists saying, "Oh, this drug dealer is a victim of society. Look at his skin color. Don't you think he's overrepresented in the prison population? Like, can we not do?" No, yeah, no, you're not going to have that. No, like they're going to experience very swift and brutal justice. And so if you have a lot of if you have less drugs coming in, you're going to have less homeless people. But again, these are criticisms that are applied to America, but you're not applying American criticisms to China. Like, for instance, food banks, right? Like, Chinese people don't have food banks. They don't even understand the concept. Which, may be a good thing. I don't know. Like, the idea is you're going to have big families so that they can support you when you're older. So you're not a burden on the community. But on top of that, if you actually don't have anything to do, like the government will try to force you to work. And so that may also reduce the number of homelessness. But in the United States, it's not just like a space issue that you don't have enough homes. But if you have a person that's addicted on meth and you take him off the streets and you give him a house, okay, he's now having a house. How is he going to pay the taxes for that house? How is he going to pay for the utilities? Like, he can't get a job. He's a drug addict. Like, his brain is fried. Like, that's a conversation. And by the way, his brain is fried doesn't mean that he's going to get some mental health and all of a sudden he's well. Like Americans like to understand that you can have a broken spine and you can never walk again, but for some reason they think that all mental illnesses are curable if you throw enough cash. No. Like, there are people with mental illnesses that are for life, and no amount of medication, no amount of psychology or psychiatry is going to fix them. And so if you have a person like that, and usually those types of issues are caused by drug abuse, substance abuse, like their actual neurons are fried from the drugs, you can't do anything to help them, right? And giving them a house, like placing them in an apartment, isn't going to fix anything because they can't pay the utilities. They still cannot get a job.
They don't have a drug problem. Like, their groceries are affordable. They only have to work one...
Again, see, if you try to implement the Chinese solutions in California, leftists like her would be the people that are preventing it. And I'm willing to bet leftists like her, if they go to China, they would try to advocate for leftist policies, except you don't have free speech over there. See, in America, you can bitch about these things on TikTok. If you do that in China, you get banned. A lot of Americans found that out. Like, they have different terms of service. And one of the terms of service is the idea of protecting the, what do they call it? The community's integrity, right? So, like, the community needs to be under wholesomeness. And you're not allowed to talk about divisive topics. So if you start criticizing, oh, they're being very tough on the drug lords. Oh, maybe they shouldn't kill people for being corrupt. Oh, I don't like the death penalty. Oh, the abortion laws, I don't like them. Yeah, you get banned. You can't have a conversation about it. You have no say in that. You can have those conversations in America, but you can't have them in China. So again, like the people that go onto the Chinese app and they talk with a couple of Chinese people that are forced to tell you the good things, like, they would get banned if they tell you the bad things. That's not a cultural exchange. That's an advertisement campaign.
One job in order to pay their bills. They were confused about having to pay for an ambulance ride. They literally have universal health care.
Yeah, that's a problem with American society. I would say that their healthcare system is not in touch with the rest of the world. I saw people paying $9,000 for an ambulance. There's a lot of grift going with the insurance companies. Now, there is a conversation to be had there, but take into account there are other nations that have good healthcare systems, and they're not China. Still, if you want to import the Chinese healthcare system, that would be interesting. Take into account that they have some really bizarre laws where, for instance, if you hurt a person with a car, like let's say you actually happen to run over someone with a car, and you take them to the hospital, you are the one responsible for their medical bills. There are videos. I don't know if they changed the legislation or not. I hope they changed it because it used to be so barbaric. Like there were videos from China with someone like running over a grandma, and then they would get out of the car and they would pull the grandma back in front of the car and run her over again because it would be less expensive if the grandma just passes away rather than them having to care for her medical bills the entire life. So again, like there are certain things that you don't get to know from Red Note, but if you go there, the Chinese people probably aren't allowed to tell you this. And I know this because, again, like we had communism here, and one of my relatives was working at a port in Constanța, a Romanian city next to the sea. And he had the same thing there. Like, he had foreigners come in and would ask him, is Romania a bad place? And he was like, no, it's amazing. Like, no, that's just Western propaganda. He was forced to say this. Of course, Romania was an awful place. Like, he knew it, while he was shivering in the cold in the middle of the winter. But he had to say this because he didn't want to get locked up.
And as time has gone on, we have literally moved further and further away from communism. And that's because communism is far left.
Yeah, again, it's the ideological thing here. You guys basically want no borders, unlimited immigrants, and then you're wondering why the house prices are high. I mean, how can I even have a conversation with such a person? Like how can I show you what's happening? Because the thing is, like, they would understand it at a small scale, right? Like, let's say you have a neighborhood with 5 empty homes, right? And there's 5 people that move into the neighborhood. Like, each person gets a house. Okay, you bring 5 more people into the neighborhood. Now there's 2 people in each house. How many people can you keep bringing until there's going to be people that will stay outside because there's no houses? Like, if that's something that you still don't understand, I don't know what to say. And if you want to build more houses, the homeowner association tells you, no, you're not allowed.
And the more time that has gone on, the more far right our country has gone. Literally further.
Yeah, America that up until now had the ideology that it's a systemically racist country. Your politicians were encouraging the concept of abolishing the police. No borders, no nations, stop deportations. Yeah, I don't think those are right-wing talking points. Putting the LGBT flag in the middle of the White House, that's not right-wing. They wouldn't do that in China, though. Interesting. Why do you think that is? Maybe because China is actually right-wing? A little bit authoritarian? Try being a feminist in China. An American version of feminist, like a third-wave feminist. Like, try doing that in China. You know what happens? You get arrested. Why? It's illegal. Like they don't arrest you stealthily. No, like, you commit a crime. You get arrested.
Away on the spectrum from the things that would all free us from our everyday life struggles. And it's all because many, many, many years ago, our government decided that in order to get us to not want communism, they had to make it seem like it was this big, scary, crazy thing. And
talk to people that lived in Russia. Holy shit. Why do you think the Soviet Union collapsed? The Soviet Union was more communist than China is now. And when China used to be communist during the Great Leap Forward, even they now, they're downplaying the calamity. But no, it was a horrible place. Again, imagine you being unable to even do this. Like, you wouldn't be able to have a TikTok. Like, that's a liberal profession. No, you're not allowed to have, you need to be in a factory and work. Let me put it this way. The reason that communism was a bad place, because maybe you're saying, I'm pushing propaganda, I'm misrepresenting facts, and it wasn't so bad. Okay, let me put it like this. Why is it that in every communist nation, the borders are closed? Did you notice that? Same with North Korea. And when I say the borders are closed, it's not like it's closed for immigrants. No. People from inside the country aren't allowed to leave. Do you know what happens if you try to leave? They shoot you. There's no conversations, no human. No, they shoot you. And in extreme cases, your relatives go to prison after they shot you. Why? To dissuade others. So if it's such an amazing place in communism, why do they prevent people from leaving? Why is China accused of having like Chinese police stations in other countries of the world? Did you hear about that? Like the FBI just cracked down on one in the United States. Why are they following and spying on the people that leave China? If it's such an amazing place, why people even leave to begin with? And when they leave, why do they get spied on? Because that's what the Chinese police station is. It basically means that if there are a lot of people living in another place, like in America, for instance, right? And there's a lot of Chinese people, they supervise them. And then they commit illegal acts against them if they break the rules, or against their families that are still in China. They monitor them, and if they do something bad, like talk ill of the CCP or whatever it is, then they get punished on foreign soil. Why would a country that's so great have to do these things? Does America do that? Like, do you think there's an American police station in China to crack down on American citizens that go there? What type of nation does that? The Soviet Union used to do similar tactics, by the way.
To basically shield us from it. And look, we're literally talking to people that live under that type of government, and they're happy. They're happy, and they cannot believe.
Well, I'm pretty sure that if I talk to an American in a rural place, if I talk to an Amish, unironically, if I talk to an Amish, I'm willing to bet money that they're happy. I'm willing to bet that they will say it's the best nation on earth, and they have less shit than you. Interesting how that is.
How Americans are letting America run, and they feel sorry for us. That's sad.
Anyway, if they were to say America is better than China, wow, I wish we guys had what you did, they would get banned. It's kind of like misgendering on Twitter or TikTok, right? Do they still have that? No, actually on Twitter you can misgender now. But under Jack Dorsey, it's kind of like denying the mighty power of the Pfizer vaccine communion. You'd get banned. So like if you were to go on social media during the pandemic, you would not hear a single person complain about vaccines. Everyone was on board. Everyone was happy with it. Why? Because every person that wasn't would get banned. Same thing with China. Let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.